Hello and welcome everyone. I am Matt and this is Noesun Podcast, a series of conversations with trailblazers. Together we explore transformative experiences and spaces. Our research in ontological design at noesun.com motivates insightful conversations with experts. It was natural to start making them public. We aim to develop this podcast into a forum for sense-making. My guest today is Naho Iguchi. She's an ecological artist and the creator of Give Space. Naho is constantly reinventing herself. She's also a urban designer, an author and producer, and a Living Future Accredited professional. Originally from Japan, Naho lives between Europe, Japan, and the US. The beauty of this mind and heart opening conversation with Naho lies in how she's using her own life to experiment, playing with a new inner and world order. Her muse, the Lioness from the South African savanna, inspires her to share with her fellow human animals. How similar we are to other animals instead of seeing ourselves as separate. How important it is to give to other species more space, and ultimately empowering us to respond to the challenges of today and recognize that we are enough. In this episode, you will be inspired by Naho's work to change the world through her Give Space methodology, Naho leading by example through her inner work, and how one's life is an art form, as Naho has been showing us. I wish you to enjoy my conversation with Naho Iguchi. Naho, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Tell me about yourself.
Okay. It's interesting, how I want to start about it. I'm an ecological artist living in Berlin. So my 10th year will be start very soon in June. So it's getting long, living in Europe, in Germany. And I am originally from Japan. My journey to become an artist itself is a part of my artistic endeavor because I didn't have any professional academic background in art or design. So I didn't go to school or I wasn't taught by an artist or anything. And in fact, my academic and professional background is organizational psychology. I did master in that, organizational psychology, and then I started immediately after graduation my own practice of freelancing. No, I didn't launch a company or anything, but as a freelance. Even though my expertise is organizational design or culture transformation, how humans convene themselves to live and work harmoniously, I have never worked in an institution or organization or, companies. And I think that tells a bit about me. I don't see myself fit in conventional, traditional types of organization. That's why I was always inclined and driven to experiment and find out new way of organizing people, new series of organizations. And so back then, while I worked in Tokyo as a communication process designer, which is one of the pillars of the Give Space as a methodology too, I created this methodology, communication process designer, even before I started in regenerative design. And through that work practice, I did a lot of community work. So how people find a new third place. Back then, this term was very trend, right? A third place, not work, not home, but another cultural space where like-minded people can get together. And then there were so many new initiatives happened around the world, including TED. And I started TEDx Tokyo, and I'm not the founder. I worked with the co-founders as an operational director. And so that was a starting point to experiment new way of working and networking together beyond the conventional boundaries of organizations and create new community from so diverse people from different disciplines and fields, from artists, creators, startups, venture capitalists, big organizations, international organizations, Japanese organizations. So through that network, I could gradually, slowly put together my own work as a communication process designer. I worked a lot with the independent designers, creators, startups, NPOs, or many social entrepreneurs. Back then, also Ashoka and the social entrepreneurship movement was just rising up. And Grameen Bank from Dr. Muhammad Yunus, those type of people who wanted to intervene with the ongoing systems to bring up something new and more beautiful. And my way of working or coming up with new ideas or organizing and hosting and holding people's place somehow was seen as an artist by many people, even though I wasn't a dancer or singer. But many of my friends describe me as an artist, maybe how I see or how I act, even though I wasn't a fine artist. And at the same time, my interest started to shift from organizational design in the business settings or in the economic system, but more larger picture of human society and human being. Because that was always my interest. My background, my major in undergrad was human science. It's more scholarly research and inquiry into humans, what humans are and what culture is. Then I shifted towards organizational psychology, more hands-on, practical, applied theory. But then my interest shifted back to the source, back to the beginning of, okay, I have done a certain amount of experimentation and data collection about organization in a business field, but still so many questions about human society as a whole. And I also wanted to leave Japan. I was born, grew up in Japan, and then I moved to the States to study organizational psychology. And I came back to Japan to start my first freelancing phase. And then I wanted to move again to explore new culture, put myself in, plunge into new cultures. And I was looking into somewhere in Europe because Asia is, my roots. So I didn't feel to move somewhere in Asia, like somewhere more different than my background. And so that intention of moving out of Japan and that description or new identity that my friends gave me, which was an artist, kind of slowly merged together, because a few of my mentors also mentioned that what you are doing is really an artist in Europe, in Europe there are many more, artistic fields, and then some artists just climb up a mountain. Like what? The kind of more conceptual way of artistic expression. And then that was very enlightening and then intriguing. And then one of the mentors taught me also the word social sculpture, which was coined by Joseph Beuys, the German artist. And actually, this year, Documenta, the huge scale art festival that runs for several months in Kassel in Germany, that takes place every 5 years. 40 years ago, Joseph Beuys planted 7,000 oak trees in Kassel as his statement and artistic expression of being connected to nature and what is our existence. So his art was really planting trees and then raising awareness. And then when I do research, Google the word ecological art, Wikipedia says that Joseph Beuys's this work, 7,000 oak, is one of the major starting point of ecological art too. So back then, when I was triggered or intrigued by the concept of social sculpture and moving to Europe to become an artist as my art project, changing my identity. I didn't know that I would become an ecological artist, and that was also prospered from Joseph Beuys's work. So it's very interesting connections, the development of path, like multiple path, changing my identity or professional role from communication process designer, which I designed for myself, but in order to sort of still communicate within this human economic system, that I can offer this and that of expertise to what you need in your business, so that we can do sort of a transactional contract, right? Even though I didn't work purely like that because I was freelancing, but more or less I was still in that field. And then my question towards human society was, okay, when I look at the other beings, animals, birds, and insects, they don't have to claim themselves. They don't have to prove themselves. They just exist and then live. Of course, yes, when we talk about the IQ or whatever, there are, of course, difference. And then I adore and I value the difference. Humans are, yes, indeed, very different of the rest of many animals, but still, I feel that we are part of it. And we emphasize too much on the difference rather than the similarities or say the sameness as life. Therefore, I had a difficulty problem with this situation or status quo, that we don't even question this condition that we have to keep proving that we are doing good. I have a good idea. I have a good sell. I can develop a good business idea in such and such years and then get money. And then, yeah, it's beautiful if they are connected to their visions and then serve to the society. But still, as a living being, why do we have to always show off that we have something good? We have good ideas, good knowledge, good skills. So I wanted to experiment to stop it. And I had nothing, no expertise or skills about art because I didn't learn it. I enjoyed drawing or I enjoyed dancing, but it's just like a hobbies, right? But it was interesting to me that many people kept describing me as an artist. So, okay, let's let it go of this communication process design identity profession that I claim, that I established, but become an artist and totally let myself lean onto others' description of who I am, which was not my descriptions of who I am. So that was the beginning of my living as an artist. But because of this way of very experimental ways, I haven't done any proper exhibitions or didn't get any grant or anything. I wasn't interested in be part of this institutionalized art field. That was not my point. And also I wasn't so interested in expressing myself to the world, but I really wanted to explore myself within. When I was invited to, Naho, this looks interesting. Why don't you apply for this artist in residency or something like that? I never get accepted because I don't have any CV and careers as an artist. So it's interesting. Still, I think many people feel uncomfortable that I call myself an artist, but I think it's cheesy cliche, but everybody can be an artist. It's the within. There is this creativity, and then we just shut it down. So I think I'm living it, and I'm being a fool.
No, it's beautiful. And I was going to ask you, why do you think your friends were seeing you as an artist, or the people around you were seeing you as an artist? Why, even if you didn't recognize it yourself, looking at from
No.
their point of view, what was it that was making them feel this way?
I think perhaps because hmm, I think I am good at come up with new concept, I think. New concept, new narrative. Yeah.
So
That I think
you're
that's one
super
thing.
creative. You think things completely different from everyone else in the room.
Right. So for example, this not completely different. Of course, there are many people who think similarly, but for example, when I started communication process design in Japan, at that time, it was very rare that someone's become a freelancer, even if they had already career in their past experience with their employees or organizations. But it was very rare that they leave their companies and then launch their own practice. But I started communication process design, this naming was also my creation. It was not like I'm becoming a web developer or I am going to freelancing a consultancy, but I came up with this job for myself too, and then became a freelancing right after the graduation. So I think this way also was seen very different,
It's very
especially
courageous.
in Japan.
Yeah, I can just even
Um,
here it's difficult. I know people who do it as well, and it's a long and winding road. How do you explain you had the courage to do it?
yeah, that has something to do with my spiritual path. And this courage came from my father's death. So I moved to California when I finished my university, and I wanted to pursue this organizational psychology, the new field at that time. Still, it's not widely recognized, right? Of course, in our field, people know, but in the larger business field, people haven't heard of organizational psychology. I tend to find something quite new that, for example, in Japan, catch up 15 years later. Now people are starting talking about mindful meditation or emotional leadership, those concepts that come from organizational studies. But anyway, I moved there and then I finished my master's and then I was looking for a job in California, San Francisco area. And then my father died like suddenly. It's a long story, but let's say suddenly, at the end suddenly. And I decided to leave the States for good on that day, as soon as I got a phone call from my brother. And I went back to Japan, I think on the following day, or I think on the same day, I immediately booked a ticket and then flew back to Japan. And since then, I lived in Japan for 5 years. So he died because of a train accident, which was very rare, right? Not the car, but the train. And my mom totally collapsed. So I took care of a lot of paperwork, went to the city halls and took care of life insurances and bank, etc. And I went through a lot of these systems when humans' life dies. So many bureaucracies, so many paperwork, so many disconnectivity to our grieving emotions and what we have to do. And but partially I was very thankful to it because these things that occupy people so that people can maintain their sanity, I think. Otherwise, they will lose themselves for like too much sadness and despair. So that these things partially good, I totally agree on that. People can keep up their regular life. But I was not like that. I really needed the time to just be myself, close up, and actually did it. And because when I came back to Japan, I was away for Japan for 5 years, and I was just graduated from graduate school, so I didn't have any connection of work or neither school or work in Japan or in the States. I was just in the middle, a very limbo state. And then I lost my father. So these changes really gave me space and time to just stay at home. I think 3 months straight or something. My brother and mom went to work every day and I just stayed home. Yes, straight 3 months or so. But it really helped me. But during that time, I took care of these paperwork and so on. And I also learned how the systems work when a human loses a life and what happens to his or her beloved ones, which was me and my family in my case. And my dad also left money to us, right? And I had a difficult time to make sense out of this money. I really didn't want to receive this money, but I knew this was his love and preparation from years ago, right? To start the life insurances for the future family and then their kids. So I received it, but I was furious about this money. I don't fucking need this money. Just give him back. And so I decided to utilize this money. Okay, my mom's concept was keep it, save it, right? But I really use it up. So, and then also I was so courageous. I didn't have anything to worry about because I saw how he struggled and then died at the end. So at that time, I also projected my thinking on him. So I shouldn't have victimized him too much, or I shouldn't have made up all the stories that how much he suffered, etc. Of course he suffered, but I shouldn't also minimize his life. But it took me years to get out of that despair and sadness, and then empathizing too much how he lost his life or how he ended his life. But his life is not just that. So right now I'm, not totally, but I am quite different. It's been 14 years too. And actually the anniversary of my father's death day is this Sunday. So this week is always a bit of, different week for me. Yeah. So that gave me so much power. It's partially coming from the pain. So my spiritual path is how I can go beyond this identity from my pain body and pain speech to love and compassion. And I think it took me 13, 14 years up to now to really feel that my pain identity is not completely, but quite a lot of it dissolved it. And this entrepreneurial path really helped, okay, this money from his life insurance was a sort of the investment from him for me to start whatever I wanted, which is to directly utilize my knowledge and practice of organizational psychology rather than just finding a spot in HR or organizational development field in one organization. Yeah.
What do you think he would have thought about your path since then?
In retrospect, from now to looking back?
Yeah, those 14 years that you've been building your practice and your skills and became an artist, from organizational design to the artistic field. What do you think his perspective would be if you were still here today?
His perspective?
Yeah.
Oh, my father's?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Maybe I don't know if he understands everything. But I think he would enjoy it. Yeah, he would really enjoy it, even though he would not understand
I mean,
half of it.
you could teach him like you're teaching me today,
Right.
and
Yeah.
probably at the end you would be convinced.
But yeah, I think yeah he would enjoy. So after his death, I found some documents that he wrote before he died, and he left several essays and novels. Yeah, he wrote novels in the very last days of his life. And many stories, plots are about traveling. Yeah. So I think that also encouraged me to move out Japan. Anyways, regardless of his death, I was always traveling, the backpacking, and lived in the States for 5 years too. And then I backpacking in Mexico or Asia. And so it's my nature too, but reading his novels also encouraged me to move out of Japan again. And then, at the end, I found Berlin, Germany.
To me, you sound like a very free spirit, very like explorer. You need always to move and test new things and create new things, which doesn't go very well with what I know of Japanese culture, which I don't know so much, but I worked a little bit with
true.
Japanese.
Yeah, very true.
So it's funny how, it probably makes sense that you had to go away. I know what it feels to be an outsider in Japan because I did business there a little bit. How does it feel for you to be an outsider to your own country? And what's the link between that kind of social pressure and that fixity of the social structure there, and you trying to reinvent a new world, and that clash basically, because it's probably the last place I would go to innovate in social relationships and new structures, because it's much more conservative, I feel. And there's also much more groupthink. I'm saying all those things as opinions as an outsider, no? But it feels like it's much more stuck and much more dense. So to penetrate that density and offer a new way of thinking, I find it very challenging.
So being outside of my country, Japan, as a Japanese, I think it's a very good thing. Not because I don't fit in Japanese culture or anything. Actually, I think I am quite good. At the end, I have a strong identity as Japanese, and I adore my culture and country. So while I look at many Japanese communities in foreign countries, I notice many people actually hate or don't like or cannot fit in Japan. That's why they leave. But my motive was not like that, not because I didn't feel comfortable or I didn't fit in, but rather pure exploration of human and society and the world. So I keep working with Japanese friends and colleagues since I moved to Berlin. And actually, I and my team in Berlin also did a lot of bridge work in the creative industry, how Tokyo and Berlin or Germany and Japan can exchange more of startups and then creative businesses. And also I can bring in new ideas. So Japanese is very conservative and segregated against the rest of the world still. Therefore, they are not ready to work with foreigners. Major reason is, of course, the language barrier, but not only that, more mental barrier as well. But I am Japanese. I'm a pure Japanese, not that I grew up somewhere outside of Japan, but still Japanese. But I was born and grew up in Japan. speak perfect Japanese, and then still I acquired a lot of new culture, integrated within me, assimilated, and have a lot of different senses and thoughts than Japanese, but I can convey that in Japanese to Japanese people in a way that they can understand. So now Japanese culture and country needs to be connected to the world more and more. And then finally, I think the COVID really helped for Japanese business people to get connected through internet to work outside of Japan. They are forced. So yeah, I am seeing a role that I can play, or something that I can offer as a Japanese who is outside of Japan, and bring in more inspirations, and also encourage them that the rest of our world is also interested in Japan, so you should express more.
True. True.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what is driving you is exploration and human improvement, you would say?
Improvement?
Yeah.
No, not human improvement. No. What drives me? At the end, I think my curiosity towards the human consciousness. What is this consciousness? I think that's the drive.
So it's understanding it, not improving it.
Right. Understanding it, and also explore the capacity. Yeah. Potential of the human consciousness.
And what made you go to organizational design first?
First.
If your passion was much deeper than that, why did you move first to this legitimacy problem? Because you wanted to use your skills in something that was existing in the world, and you could have a diploma and something to show for your thought process, or was it something else?
So my undergrad major was human sciences, and that was the interdisciplinary field in liberal arts about human and culture. And I think this human science movement actually started in France or somewhere in Europe to counter the traditional social science and liberal arts that established from Descartes and Jung and Freud, that type of very rigid silo ways of seeing, researching humans. Like all disciplines were separated, like sociology, anthropology, psychology, etc. But human sciences try to bring these all together to look at humans from very different perspectives. And so I got to study a lot of different fields, which usually students in other majors were not allowed, because for the sociology department, their credits were mainly from sociology courses. But in human sciences, I could get from anthropology, religious studies, political science, music, of course, psychiatry, psychology, etc. And then in these wide variety of choices, I was fascinated with psychology, starting from clinical psychology. But I didn't see second year, third year students in Japan begin to think about their career, because in 1 year or so they will graduate. So they start doing an internship or looking for a job. At that time, I didn't see myself becoming a therapist or a psychiatrist or psychoanalysis. That was different. Rather, I thought the field of psychology is very useful because it's about human emotions and communications, but it's not our regular knowledge like mathematics or science. And yet we use we need to use this psychological knowledge all the time because we communicate constantly, no matter what, wherever we are. But I think we communicate so naturally, we acquire the language and communication skill from 1 year old or even 0 year old. I think we are so unconscious or blind that how much skill we also intentionally have to build up, but it's lack of it from the educational system or the parenting too, oftentimes. So I thought psychology should be more major study in everybody because human psyche is very important because we are operated through that. So how can I spread the awareness that psychology is useful? It's not just for cuckoo, crazy people that the media showcases. But when you want to have a relationship or when you work with your colleagues or bosses, and then all my senior friends who already graduated and then started working, they complain about human relationship at their work, even though they were hired by the dream jobs or dream companies. So people needs to learn about psychology more. My conclusion was, but still people are very skeptical about psychology. Psychology cannot be useful because it's only for mentally disabled people or mentally ill people. But I didn't believe that. And how can I convince people that psychology is useful? That was to utilize in business, because people in Japan, after we lost the World War II, I think our new religion after the emperor was business, just the industrial development. That's why we reached to that at some point highest point as an economy. And so we need to introduce psychology in business. And I started research and then found this study, organizational psychology and industrial psychology already existed. So that was the development.
Gotcha. Okay. If I had to summarize what you do today with companies or with individuals, how would you talk about your role, your work?
So my work is give space. So I develop a new urban design methodology, which I name Give Space. And my work is to raise awareness in people around the world, anyone, that we need to let it go of our possession and attachment to the lands and resources and more materialistic, economic driven ways of living, and then giving back space, which is a habitat, to other human beings. And at the end, serving to the other beings will benefit us because it will resolve the climate problem, extreme weather situations, pollutions, loss of biodiversity, and even wars and stuff. If we started to letting go of the fights over resources, mainly gas and oils. But this is such a big message, so I am focusing on mainly urban design. And when we think about one building or one street or one park, still all these things connect, energy, materials, water usage, other animals and beings, air quality, water quality, people's well-beings. We need to design all things when we design one building or one street, one city, one block. So that's why I focus on this very physical, tangible things to address all the systemic connections. But at the same time, as we met through Village 3.0, I don't limit myself, or I don't give space to the only urban, anywhere on Earth. As long as we survive or we exist on this planet, we need to give back more space to the other human beings. That's my thought. And I introduce new ways of thinking, such as regenerative thinking or biophilic design, or the communication process design that I created beforehand, and also spiritual work and ecological art. So I am putting all these 5 elements together as a methodology and introduce it. So what I see in the built environment field, the architecture, engineer, sustainability consultation, etc., in the regenerative design field, when I read literatures by the experts, they know that we need to shift culture and mindset as well in order to design buildings in a regenerative way, because we don't see the need in changing our conventional old patterns unless we are more connected to the other beings in more loving, compassionate ways. But regenerative thinking or regenerative design, biophilic design really doesn't present the process design part. These methodology don't encompass tools and methods and paths for how peoples need to communicate in order to do this such projects. So for that, I think communication process design really can serve a lot, because it's all about that. How we speak, how we hold a space for dialogue, how we listen actively and mindfully, how we listen to ourselves in inner voices, how we utilize our body, and how we design every meeting so that we can use time effectively with the people who agree to share 1 hour or 2 hours at the same time. These little behavior shifts will yield cultural shifts. So I am combining these architectural design methods and my more organizational human side of process design. And also I believe that give space methodology consists of 4 different realms. At the moment, it will evolve. At the moment, space represents 4 different layers of space, which is the physical realm, which like village or building or infrastructure. Mental, which is the organization, institutions, laws and regulations, etc. And third is emotional space, which is more human connection. And the fourth is spiritual space, which is intra space. So each individual has its own inner space. So it's not shared unless you are connected to this collective unconscious and such. But I usually don't talk about that level with my clients. Maybe sometimes that's an anecdotal story, but usually it's too far. But in the theory, my methodology, that's. And then I also introduce to my clients practice during our sessions too, in our regular meetings. So walking, awareness work. So slowly, bits and pieces, I introduce this spiritual space as well. These 4 spaces need to be addressed and designed in our daily business practice, not just regenerative design of how to increase the energy production on site, or how to design 100% closed loop water system, etc. We also have to work on our human system, our inner system at the same time, not separately. So that's what I am doing through Keep Space.
When I thought of you initially, I was thinking, let's say that you have an architect and a project manager, someone taking care of the water, experts, etc. I was seeing you as one other expert that needs to think through, kind of audit the project and say, okay, this is missing and this is the way we should connect with the biodiversity, or this is how we should think about human relationship within the space that you're studying or contributing to. But actually what you say is you need to change the way people are relating to each other within the project. And so your engagement in the project is much less punctual. It's much less narrow. It's actually, okay, let's reinvent the way we are relating to each other, because that's as important as what we will do in the space. So you're reinventing the working relationships in the projects that you join as well. So you're not coming as another subject matter expert. You have a meta process
Right.
management
Exactly.
where you help people relate to each other within the project.
Right. Yeah. To respond to it, I don't have an expertise in architecture or engineering. I have studied for the past few years, so I have enough knowledge to communicate with them, but I cannot design anything. I don't have any expertise in it. I'm not ecologist or biologist or geologist either. So I need these experts to design the built environment or village, plumbing system or bio toilet system. I cannot do that, but I have good enough knowledge to communicate and also bring new perspectives so that they can be more compassionate or more playful or more creative instead of just doing more sustainable or restorative work. Really to feel it and have a conversation and go out and then co-design new working processes. Yeah.
There's a lot of technical things happening. And then there's something that is happening more on a feeling level, how people feel with each other when they're working and all these aspects, which is very immaterial. And it's hard to sell the value of this aspect. And actually, I'm feeling the same problem. We have retreats. And the most important thing of the retreat is the energy that you feel, the atmosphere. It's hard to show on a video. It's hard to explain to people. And we just got a video that actually captures that essence, that kind of peace, joy, energy of creation, which is very hard to, it's hard to sell. How do you do it? Because that's your livelihood depends on people understanding this in projects, and most of them are technical, and there's their budgets as well. So I'm guessing that they are thinking, okay, we need that much money for the infrastructure, and this is how we're going to organize the space and the interior design. How do they find a reason to get you to engage with them?
That's a very important question, and I am often asked, especially by architects or landscape designers who I try to connect in Europe. And then when I present my idea, that's great and then very complex, but my clients would blah 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 blah, and then how it will be difficult to implement. So I don't target at any. I don't go out to get my clients. That's not my way. I have never done that for my whole entire career life. As a freelancer, I don't need a large scale client accounts either. So I really need a niche of who think this is good. That's one important aspect. And how I acquire or meet with my clients is always very spontaneous. I think this is also a part of one of the reasons why many friends describe me as an artist, because I don't plan or strategize to appeal my work. That's why I don't have a website either. It will happen. And then that way of working is also the outcome of my artistic experimentation. So when I moved from Japan to Berlin, I became an artist. So I changed my professional identity and I attached another layer of experimentation, which is money. Because back then when I was in the grad school studying organizational psychology, yes, organizational studies itself is a field, but the theories or paradigm beneath organizational theories are always dependent on economic paradigm, economic system. So the economic system is growth-oriented, very functionalistic paradigm. So at the end, organizational studies also, it's the end result of the larger system. So that's why I also try to design a new theory of organization, which was a bit detached to the current economic system. But I couldn't do it fully. So when I stopped working as a communication process designer and I decided to move to Berlin, okay, let's tackle on money. an economy which I had avoided or I didn't done back then in school. And what I did was, so I created my own hypothesis. Okay, the convention. So I'm not economic major, and I suck at numbers, so I don't know much about the economic theories. So I created my own very simple hypothesis. One, the current system, transactional system, economic system, you need to sell your knowledge, which is something that I always had difficulty with. Why do we have to prove always selling good ideas and good business plans, etc.? So we need to do that. And someone who has other business that needs that labor or service buys it, right? And then the contract is closed. And then this transactional relationship starts, and then you get money, and then that is your livelihood. You can survive. And since I started TEDx, that was 2009. Around that time, all these Twitters, Facebooks, not Indiegogo, but a Kickstarter, these web startups also risen up in San Francisco while I was there, and also when I came back to Japan. And this crowdfunding concept or pay forward concept emerged, also with help from social entrepreneurship. How people who already have money can pay more a little bit or support for a good cause, not because of a transactional return. So the TEDx community that I launched, I did small financial experimentation. First, I started TEDx Tokyo, which has large scale, targeted at high profile people like the original TED. But I did a spin-off, TEDx Tokyo YZ, which focused on generation Y and Z. So for the younger generation, like teenagers and 20s. I was at that time also 20s. So I wanted to create different financing system than sponsorship or partnership, that people who see TED is cool, the big companies, Japanese companies who see TED is promising, they gave us 5K or 10K, not big, but not small either, right? To run huge conference and events. But TEDx Tokyo YZ that I run was much smaller scale, smaller to 100 participants, and all young people plan and organize. So I created this supporter system that independent business owners or people who are quite established, like in 30s, late 30s, 40s, still younger in the business field, give away money from their pocket, not from their companies. And then I also set the amount intentionally smaller so that we can collect the number of supporters who really support, not the big money to run a huge, excellent luxury events, but wanted to expand the community. That's why we collected just 200 euro type of money from 10, 20 established business people in 30s, 40s, and half of it from the ticket sales from people who want to be part of it. So this is similar to crowdfunding, right? People invest because they believe in the idea, a vision, and then they want to be part of it. But still, there is sort of a return, like attending a conference, right? But I felt the supporters really didn't need the return. They genuinely gave away $200 to us because they believe in this young energy and leadership. So I wanted to go one step further from this crowdfunding money system. What can I do as an artist, individual? And then that was to get money for my life, and I don't return anything. I don't promise anything. I just get money from my friends and people who love me and trust me to start a new life in Berlin. So I shared this idea. I'm thinking to collect money for nothing, just for my life, to be myself now. What do you think? And interestingly enough, many friends thought that was a cool idea. Why don't you try? So I started to meeting with friends and people. Hello. So I met over, I think, 70, 80 people, and 1/3 of people agreed to give me money for nothing, like just to be myself or becoming an artist in Berlin. So I collected 20,000. Yeah, that could sustain myself for at least 1 year. And I came to Berlin, and many of my friends sent me money monthly, so I could see their names on my bank account, and that really changes the meaning of money, my relationship to money, and the relationship between us two as humans. And a few months later, after I moved to Berlin, I really felt that, okay, there is no discrepancy between myself and my philosophy or my belief system, because oftentimes we stumble because of this money thing. We have to compromise ourselves, our decisions, because at the end we need money to sustain ourselves. But I managed to sustain myself purely based on my people's love and trust. That freed me up. It was an incredible experience, of course. And then this experiment lasted, I think, five years or so. I didn't collect every time only purely from that. Of course, I started to generate money from work too, but this allowed me to purely explore to become a human animal, which is to distinguish between human animal fear and civilized fear. Civilized fear is the fears that we have as humans in anthropocentric society, that if we don't deliver this, I would suck, or especially in Japan, I'm such and such age, that's why I should do this. My profession is this, and I would like to live in this neighborhood and in this type of apartment and this type of furniture. It's an expression and beautiful, but at the same time, it's an attachment to limit ourselves that force us to believe that we have to maintain this way of living, but it's not. To me, human animal fear is pure fear that any being should have to survive, to distinguish risk. Without fear, we will die. So fear is very important function too. So we shouldn't just kick out of fear, but have a healthy connection to this emotion or sensations of fear. So I started to distinguish what is fear is within me. Is it human fear or unnecessary civilized fear? And the major of civilized fear is the decline in money, or money doesn't constantly come in. I was already used to it because I was freelancing, and I also had money from my father's. So my starting point was very different from most of the people who would be hired and then got the monthly income for 10 years, 20 years, right? But I had never had that. So in that sense, I'm totally different too. On top of it, I received money from purely love and trust. And I could continue this experiment for 5, 6 years. And even till now, once in a while, some friends give me money because they know about what I have done, this experiment. So that they just give money or nothing. Oh no, hi. But this really helped me. Okay, I will not react. I will not make a decision only because of my fear against money. So I didn't choose to get a job or find easier job or job that is relating to my soul, but not necessarily in line with it. I didn't choose it. I really sat in this fear for weeks and sometimes a month or two. But instead, I followed the other beings' ways of living, people every day, spontaneously, and what will come, what will bring in these people. And then I could manage to launch our projects, and sometimes get money, sometimes don't. But gradually, this became my way. So now I never seek for clients or work. Nothing comes. I just spend every day until something happens from friends and networks. And Give Space clients also came in that way. I didn't look for it. And people didn't know that I know that biotic design and designing Give Space. But Japanese developer came to me, and then our work started. So I think I have that tolerance and endurance that people would really freak out.
I hear
But
you.
yeah.
I hear you. I was not expecting at all to go through that story you went through of you asking for money to your friends. I was not expecting that. My initial question was more, I'll ask you again, but my initial question was more about how people value your services. So how that developer values your services. Let's get there. But what I loved about your answer, the human animal, is more about being an animal and being enough just by being, like that ladybug that is just enjoying her life or having her life. She's not worried about the state she's in. She's looking for food, she's doing her thing. And we always try to be more because we try to provide value and prove our value to society. That concept I understand and I'm trying to live by it. But you made it true through the money system. I find it amazing. Thank you for the story. When you started, it felt anecdotal, but it's not. It's essential. It's really important from the human animal concept that you have, where we are enough. You made it true through the lifestyle you had and your relationship with money. So I find it amazing. And so just to go back to the spirit of my question was more, what is the number one reason why people work with you? From that give space methodology and that work with the more immaterial, the more feeling side of things, when you have technical people that are engaging in profit and maximizing the impact for shareholders or for the city, how what is the reason why they end up working with you? Because there's always a business agenda. And even if you can talk about how we feel, the way I see it is, even if you talk about the feeling aspect and how the experience will be, it's always going to have to translate into some business outcome. Is there going to be retention of clients? Is it going to create more marketing? There's always something that it needs to translate into based on the kind of relationships I've been in. So again, it's the struggle of the whole world that we've been into and what we aspire to, where we want people to be more happy just for the sake of them being more happy. So how do you transition this? Because otherwise it feels like we have those good intentions and we know we work in this current structure. And so we need to translate those good intentions into hopefully some business outcome. And it's not a lie, it will be translating into a business outcome. But have you been able to free yourself from those metrics? Or do you need to, okay, this is the result I'm looking for, and anyway, it will translate into results for you in your business language and your business metrics?
So I don't use KPI or anything. I don't use those words with them because these are not my words. I haven't studied MBA or anything. At the end, I think my answer would be more meta level. I think people decide to work with me, whether they are corporates or individuals, when they really want to change themselves. I think that's the essence. And then it's easier for smaller startups or individual clients, but for a large corporate like my current Give Space consultancy client, I think they recognize that their conventional way no longer works, but they don't know how to change their industry or way of working. That's why I think they agreed on this venture of hiring me to apply Give Space, especially biotic design and regenerative design that they are interested in, because they are a developer. they are building buildings. They heard of these concepts somewhere, biophilic design or regenerative as buzzwords, but they didn't know about it. And then they happened to meet me, who happened to have some knowledge. So that was the click. But why they keep hiring me, because they could have stopped, right? Is, I think, yes, they really want to change at their level, their own level. When I work with them, of course, yeah, it's not transformational enough because it's too large as a company to go through the real transformation. It takes 4 or 5 years, I think. So that's totally fine. But still, why they value me is that they see that what I'm offering is very different from what they know in their field and their expertise. And then they know, thankfully, they appreciate that very different ways. So in a sense, it is surprising that my first client is Japanese large corporate, which is considered to be a very conventional and not risk taker, not a risk taker, but yeah, I think they happen to be a different one. And hopefully I will find these organizations in Europe too.
So they come for one specific feature of what you do, the buzzwords that you were talking about. They look for an expert on those aspects. And then you come in and you give them such a different experience of the world through your eyes and through your perspective that you act like a catalyzer for change or the catalyzer for creativity, because you open their mind so much, like, okay, wow, it helped us maybe uncover some new challenges or find new ways of doing things. Would it be correct? Like you basically trigger more creativity just by being so different to them and their teams, and they haven't anyone. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. We don't know what we don't know. What is the main thing that they come and they're like, wow, that changed us? If you were to pinpoint some ways of thinking that you have that open their mind, and probably that's the reason why you keep working with them, is like, wow, it goes far beyond what we initially thought about when we were engaging with you.
They didn't know that they didn't know about their colleagues that much. Yeah, because they only communicate at the certain fixed ways only for agendas in tasks and management, and their ways of gathering meetings and conferences and then contractors, subcontractors, they follow the protocols always. So they didn't know even about their team members or close colleagues.
What is the main reason why this is successful at the moment, this consultancy? What would you say is the success factor? What would you say is the reason why it's working?
For them.
Yeah. And for you as well, because then you keep engaging.
For them, a success factor is, yes, it's similar to what I've said. And openness, openness and readiness for change, readiness for something different, like real readiness, not just hoping, but readiness to try out just one little behavioral change. Yeah. That readiness of something new is very important. And the something new doesn't have to be big. No. It's just, for example, changing how to call each other amongst team.
Would you say that before they met you, they had made some work already to become more conscious of how the world is going, and maybe they were reflecting already, or they were doing some inner work, like, I don't know, I'm just saying meditation, or they starting to want to relate to one another differently? Did some process happen before engaging with you?
This is only my assumption and then not truth, but I think mostly external pressure rather than intrinsic motivation. So external pressure lit the light in their professional needs as an individual, but not necessarily personal intrinsic motivation. I don't know. Yeah. Some of them, of course, it varies by each client member. Many people are starting to react to this external pressure of climate change and SDGs and COP and all the new regulations for carbon neutral, etc. And then now wars and dependency of oils and gas. And then when I come in, I help to generate their intrinsic motivations too, because for a real change, systemic change towards regenerative design, we need both external pressure and intrinsic motivation. That's the change theory. And I think it's true too. Yeah.
You're a free electron. You don't belong to any organization and you basically come in and help them change. Is there any ideal organization you have in mind? What is the perfect organization you would like to set up? And are there companies or organizations out there that you think, wow, I would like to belong to this one?
Okay. So I don't know an existing company that I would like to belong to, but I am thinking to launch a company myself in a hopefully near future. I don't know when. And I don't see myself hiring people, but I need co-founder or two, 2, 3 co-founders, including me, and then launch together. And the ideal situation, so have you ever heard, I think you have heard of Purpose Foundation or For Purpose Organization. So it's a new way of financing company to remove the dependency or speculation from the investors to the startups or companies, so that the company's purpose, organization's purposes are fully protected within the organization and not rely on people. I have been studying this for-purpose organization structure, financial system, governance system. And in Austria and maybe Switzerland too, there you can already launch such as legal entity, but in Germany not yet. The legal system doesn't allow. You always have to create a GmbH or UG and then design the financial system in such a way, but the legal entity still stays as a regular corporate, a profit organization. But I would love to make my company as a for-purpose organization, that the money the company would receive from investors are not messed up with the investors, but utilized fairly for the purpose of the organization.
I don't know. I've never heard about the term, so I'll check.
And so that's the hardware. And in terms of software management system, I have studied or did research and also tried in my team the more teal organization type. That's how Victor knew each other too. I am not necessarily totally freak about teal, but what I have been doing through organizational studies knowledge through communication process design really overlap with teal systems. So I can say that, yeah, the management operational side of it would be more teal-like organization.
When you do the give space methodology with this company in Japan, are you starting to have a roadmap towards some kind of, not teal, but some kind of new world organization with them, and they see the value and you're engaging on this, or are you still very punctual in your consulting on, okay, let's look at this project and let's look at how we organize the colleague relationships. How is it going? Because you can always do like small things so that you start to show small wins, I guess, and they are convinced that it's valuable to work with you, and then maybe expand and go for something much bigger.
It's still punctual, but I already suggested my thought of how, in order to implement regenerative design in their buildings, we need to tap into the organizational side too. So they are aware of it aware of my idea or intention too, but I don't know whether they will accept it, ready for it, or whether we will actually implement it. I would find out more actually this year, I guess. But I am, throwing some jobs and to that part
Gotcha.
too. Yeah.
And which are the actors that you think would most benefit from your work and would most benefit the earth, let's say? Is it okay, I'm gonna do some program or packaged offer for all developers in the world and I'm gonna train them all, or you were speaking to me about schools the other day. So I'm gonna try to give that knowledge to kids, because the earlier they know about it, then I can change the next generation. Where are you betting at the moment to offer your wisdom?
So to be honest, right now I don't have much focus because I'm very beginning and then also explorational phase. So I'm happy for any layers. And then yes, I am working with the developers or maybe municipalities for their sustainability strategy. And also I am giving an online course right now, also to the Japanese audience right now. Participants are so diverse, from architect to university student to professional farmer to independent school owner and so on. And also some entrepreneur who wants to redesign their office. And what they are receiving from Give Space methodology is outstanding. I am amazed. And then each participant has to decide a place to really implement Give Space methodology based on the learning from the online course to do the prototype in May, June, July. And right now, so that's why I'm preparing them with my knowledge, and then they are coming up with their project where they would like to intervene to give back more space, and from their house, the apartment balcony to backyard, and of course the farmers wants to intervene with her or his farm with the more community work related. But one participant come up with this idea of intervene with in own intestine, in internal organisms and how it connects to the our bioorganisms. And then this kind of give space regenerative design cannot be done by the regenerative design or biophilic design offered by architects or sustainability consultants, not at all. Oh, and then this person would not take that course either, right? Because he or she is not an architect or in the field. So I see a potential because I'm an artist, and it's a lot of disadvantages too, but also more openings and availability too. And then the university student would like to do it in somewhere at the campus. That's also beautiful.
It's a very fertile ground. So many things can come out of it. The question I would be asking myself if I was you is like, how can I scale at some point so that you can impact more people? And from
and
the
more
artistic
habitat.
research, that there's just a seed there that you can water at some point.
Well, then, municipal government level, and then real biodiversity restoration and recovery strategy can be done based on give space. I think that is more impactful in terms of giving more habitats. Yes.
It's a good segue. When I'm envisioning the perfect result for deep work, reconnection, relaxation, and creativity, I always picture a very remote location, because that's where you can get away from culture because you're far away. The deeper in nature you are, the least influence you get from society. And so you can reinvent yourself, and you also can reinvent the group and the space and everything because you're away. And so every time I'm dreaming about a very remote location where you would have to drive maybe 20, 30 minutes deep in nature until you get there. So from a ontological design point of view, I want to change in a very selfish way. As humans, we want to change. It makes sense. But then once you think about the impact on nature, the noise, the presence of humans, obviously we would have to change the ground so that we can build buildings, or maybe there are ways to make it okay, but we're still conquering more space in nature. What recommendation would you have? Because the first one to me is like, okay, maybe we just need to avoid this altogether and retreat back to the cities and back to the places that we occupy already, not get into more nature. And so the only way for me to think about this and be like, okay, it's still okay, would be to reuse old mines or old industrial projects and old things that were there. But at the same time, we could return them to nature too. So that there's this tension in me where I feel guilty about thinking about those things sometimes, because I'm like, yeah, you're going to transform people, but even if you're not occupying too much ground, you know that the animals hear you from far away, they smell you from far away, and so you are impacting their lives. And you take, even if you take 200 acres, you're taking so much more of the mountain or the forest because they know you're there. So the one I was telling you, maybe use a mine or use a old human settlement, and also maybe use this community as a way to protect the land. So I'm always thinking, maybe we're just guardians. If you have well-intentioned humans and there's poaching in the area, or there are people who try to cut the trees or something, having humans is a way to protect that nature. Those are the ways I kind of get there. But I feel sometimes it's cosmetic change. And the only real way of making an impact is actually to retreat. What is your thinking on this?
I totally with you, and then your thinking is very beautiful. Yes, I would also go for first try to find already cultivated human old settlement if you can renovate it, because it's already some cultivation is there. I think that that's okay. And also it is very important to invite experts such as ecologists or geologists, and then do site research, and then learn about the other animals' movements and then their needs, and then whether it is really makes sense to intervene that land or not. Yeah, I think that scientific evidence is very important in terms of regenerative design.
You would have people checking the land even before thinking about buying it or thinking about engaging on the land.
That's ideal. Yes, I think that's ideal. Yeah. Or at least if you can hire, or at least you can talk to the local people or do research in their municipalities, information or histories, and maybe you will find out something that is useful. Whether human intervention will be more good for the ecosystem or not. If you want to use the totally new land, if you choose an old abandoned place, then I think that's less. But then you have to probably check the soil contamination, water contamination, etc. It is healthy enough, or but also then it is very meaningful that humans as an ecosystem builder to come in and purify these systems so that the other fishes, fish and birds will benefit. Even though, even in Chernobyl, nature can survive. So maybe we don't have to come in and then purify, but we don't know about the the genetical deformation in 30, 50 years. So maybe good to also intervene with this chemical contamination if you choose such places. I think, yeah, that's my thought.
Cool. And one last question would be, what kind of experience we're doing retreats, right? The goal for us is not to give content too much so that you have more time to work. We still give content. What kind of experience would you recommend for people to learn about the human animal concept or the give space methodology? How would you teach it?
To teach, so the content of human animal, to experience
for people,
it.
Yeah, for people to understand it, to integrate it into their lifestyle. How would you do it?
If I were at your place, then I would make the best out of the natural settings to walk around, convene, and also have individual alone time for self-exploration and coming together. So yeah, those combination of those things, but it may take a few hours at least, not just 30 minutes or so.
Mm.
Yeah.
So experiential being in nature would be the first answer you have.
To be a human animal, and also the work of identity. Yes, in more mental realm, to sort out what identity you have and then which identity you can let go. That kind of work would really help.
Would the main insight from human animal be I'm enough?
Yeah, and that's very Zen. It is enough. It's a Zen philosophy. Yeah.
It's a very simple concept, but it takes time to realize it. Anything you would like to share that we didn't cover?
The inspiration of Lioness, how I received this epiphany of, okay, human animals need to give back more space. That's our role on this planet. Came to my encounter with lionesses in the South African savanna. And Lioness is my muse. And in addition, lion is also not endangered, but the vulnerable species that maybe in total less than 20,000 or 15,000 in the wild. So we need to protect them. Yeah.
When are you thinking to release the movie?
I think in 5 or 6 years, because it's a poetic documentation. So I need to first document my life and give space work a lot. So it will take time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you basically every time you go to the savannah, you get a lot of materials and you get inspiration.
Yeah, that's my hope from now on. And also here in Berlin or Tokyo, whenever I do more give space work, and I would like to document the path that we are giving back more space, or people are shifting or learning this idea of giving back more space.
Are you visiting a carbon offset lands, for instance, or places where they're doing regenerative work? So
No, not yet. I would love
it.
to, but yeah, I haven't visited yet at all. No, I should plan a trip tour. Yeah. If you know, please recommend the places.
Sounds good. I'll do that. Any resource that you recommend? Any book to read about what you're doing?
I can send you the list.
The links. Okay, sounds good. Cool. Now, it was beautiful. I love talking with you. I hope it was useful for you
Me
too.
too. Yeah, thank you for being a good listener and having this space and time. Yeah.
I loved it, and
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too.
Thank you again, Naho, for all your wisdom and beauty. I wish you and all of us a lot of space. If you look forward to the next episode or want free access to our research, go to noesun.com/research.